Hey everyone, Cynics here. I thought it might be fun to give you guys a quick bonus video about my exciting trip to China. This trip was extra special for me because it was my first time really going anywhere out of my America bubble. My wife had suggested we take the trip, and to be honest, I was a little terrified of the long flight. I have this irrational fear that anytime I'm stuck in a small area for a long amount of time, my body is going to just flip out and decide to put poop in my pants or something. Luckily, this has never happened, but it doesn't stop the fear. I came up with a cunning solution though. If I simply stay awake for 24 hours before my flight, surely I will be able to sleep through the whole trip. As it turns out, I'm incapable of sleeping on an airplane. 20 hours and 2 flights later, we made it to our destination, Nanjing, China. Right off the bat, the culture shock is real. Almost no one in China speaks English, and it's nearly impossible to get by without speaking Chinese or having a guide. Luckily, my wife is from China, so I just spent the entire trip following her around like a lost and confused puppy. Anyway, the second we left the airport, I got my first taste of Chinese traffic. Pure and unbridled chaos. Lane markers were but a mere suggestion, cars just floating around the road needlessly from side to side. Some stopping in the middle of the road to read signs, everyone just honking constantly in a continual conversation between all of those brave enough to get behind a wheel. Buses were especially terrifying, constantly slipping within mere inches of every surrounding vehicle, stopping less than a foot behind any car in front of them, while motorcycles and scooters were popping in and out of the sidewalks and walkways. It's frankly terrifying. But eventually your mind starts to adjust and you realize that they're just driving the same way people would walk in a crowd. While driving in America seems like a very separate concept from walking, in China there's no real difference, and I'm genuinely impressed that people seem to get by without an accident every day. We made it though. My wife's mother was there to welcome us. Now, a quick cultural side note. In my family, we hug everyone, especially family, but even friends, male, female, whatever. In China, they're not so accustomed to hugging. Needless to say, I went in for the hug, and my wife's mom ducked and weaved past my arms as if she was dodging a punch. Not the best interaction, but oh well. Before we get to our adventures in Nanjing, we actually decided to hop on a bullet train over to Shanghai and spend the first part of our trip there. First of all, I just want to say the public transportation in China is amazing. The bullet trains are super convenient and you can always hop on a bus from pretty much anywhere. In Shanghai and Nanjing especially, the subway system is super new and clean and very reliable. Rush hour is no joke though. The concept of personal space does not exist in China. Remember elbow room? Nah, not in China. Whether you're on the subway or even just waiting in line for food, it is a strictly nuts to butts type of situation. Luckily, I am fairly tall and slender, which is the ideal body type for this situation. The constant sardine vibe was more amusing to me than anything. Shanghai is one of the more young and modern cities in China. Supposedly, it's known for being a bit more polite and progressive. Of course, society starts to break down a little bit when you go to a place like Shanghai Disneyland. This place has only been open for a couple of years, so everything still feels pretty fresh and impressive. As someone from Southern California, I'm very familiar with Disneyland. And while Shanghai Disneyland might be large, it has a lot less to actually do. It's nice looking, but also very spread out and a bit less immersive. I think there's probably less than 10 real rides in the whole park, and maybe only a few of those are actually impressive. At least you can pretty much see everything in one day, so that's good. We even managed to see a total of 2 fights break out in the park, both relating to the ancient Chinese art of line cutting. Seriously though, cutting in line in China is considered more of an embarrassment for the person that gets cut rather than the person cutting. As my wife likes to remind me, in China, only the strong survive. People will find all sorts of ways to get ahead of you, crying children, lost grandparents, whatever it takes. I should mention the fights we did witness, which both required police intervention, were not started by young troublemakers. Oh no, friends, it was old Asian ladies, the most dangerous troublemakers in all of China. A quick review of the Disney highlights. There was a pretty great ride inspired by Tron the movie. It's basically just a modified version of Space Mountain, but it was nice. The Soaring Over the Horizon ride is okay, but not worth being the longest and slowest line in the park. The crowning achievement is most definitely the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. First of all, they apparently love Pirates of the Caribbean in China because 1/3 of the park was themed around it. That's right, pirate ships, pirate shops, and pirate restaurants taking up more of the park than any of the other actual themes. I don't know how accurate their theming was though, because I'm pretty sure while we were eating ribs at Barbossa's backyard barbecue, they were just blasting traditional Irish folk songs over the speakers. I guess they kind of sound like pirate sea shanties. Anyway, the ride is ridiculous. I think they blew all of their technology budget on just this ride. It's like a sequel to the version we have here in Anaheim at Disneyland. It even starts off with a couple references to the old ride before blasting you into special effects land with giant 360-degree IMAX screens and impressive animatronics. I'm not going to say it's worth the admission just for this ride or anything, but it's definitely the best part. Enough about Disneyland though. Shanghai itself was a blast. We got to meet up with one of Joyce's cousins and explore Nanjing Road and the Bund, which are great spots for hanging out, shopping, grabbing food, and seeing some of the best views of the city, especially at night. But I won't bore you too much with all my touristy spots, otherwise this video will go on forever. I will tell you, it's super weird how all the old temples and structures have just been squeezed in among new shopping areas and fancy buildings. The general vibe in these cities is kind of interesting. It feels like you're inside a mall for 90% of the time you're going anywhere. Everything is a mall, and you're never more than 10 steps away from a place to get food. This might actually be a good time to talk about food. I completely love Chinese food, especially the cheap, simple stuff. Throw me a couple bucks and I'm in heaven with a bowl of cold sesame noodles and a Chinese hamburger. Now, I'm not the most adventurous eater, but damn, I love myself some dirty street food. I love pig ear and durian and most of the fun stuff. The only place I really draw the line is on chicken feet. I don't know if you guys have ever tried chicken feet, but the best way to describe it is like meat-flavored jello filled with little bones. Regardless, I'm not going to pretend the food was amazing everywhere. There were plenty of mediocre spots. Here's my tip on how to find a good restaurant. Does it have a filthy squatting toilet with a random container full of turtles just chilling in the bathroom? If so, it's probably a good one. Do they get angry and confused if you ask for some cold water to drink? Also a good sign. That is certainly something you start to miss when you stay in China for too long. Refreshing cold water. But I digress. I know what you really want to hear, some hard-hitting fast food reviews. So here we go. If you're a child that can't go a few days without your nuggies, rest assured there is a McDonald's on nearly every block in China. I tried it once because everyone told me it was different and better in China. The pineapple pies and taro pies are pretty spectacular, especially compared to the lame apple pies we have in America, but everything else was entirely unremarkable. KFC is also super common and pretty uninteresting. Pizza Hut is the weirdest of the bunch because they all treat it like a fancy upscale restaurant. It's just weird. China doesn't quite understand pizza culture, but that's fine. The place I do want to review is the one that I was most surprised to see in China, Carl's Jr. That's right, our boy Carl has made it all the way to China. Real talk for a moment, I grew up next to a Carl's Jr., and as lame as this is, I get all of my happy nostalgia vibes from eating a Western bacon cheeseburger. It's like eating a bite of my childhood. So, can China possibly do justice to this pillar of my youth? The answer is somewhat. The flavors are all there, and the onion rings are quite unique, very light and flaky. The quality of the meat is great, but the patty is definitely smaller than it is here, which is problematic because the ratio of ingredients is very important in my opinion, which is coincidentally why I never liked the double Western bacon cheeseburger. It has the wrong ratio. Anyway, the cheese has a gooier texture, but the main issue with the entire burger is really the bacon. Chinese bacon is just different than American bacon. It feels more accurate to just call it pork belly. It's much chewier overall. Not really the aesthetic we aim for here, but it has its own appeal in Asian dishes. Overall, despite the quality of the ingredients seeming better, I have to give this matchup to America. Alright, enough of my nonsense. Let's take this little suit off. The second half of this trip takes place back in Nanjing. After a short train ride back to Nanjing, we were lucky enough to be staying with relatives in a nice house. I loved the view out of the window, but best of all, my wife's aunt is a great cook, and we got to be completely spoiled with home-cooked meals every day. Unfortunately, her family doesn't speak any English, but it wasn't too much of an issue. Until the one time I had to eat a meal without her. Things started off simply enough, a bunch of great dishes were out on the table, and everyone kept pointing at one of them and urging me to try it. It smelled delicious and looked vaguely like sliced up pork or some other meat, so I took one happily and bit straight into it. My friends, this was not pork. It turned out to be a very specific type of fish that requires a very delicate method in order to eat correctly. My mouth instantly explodes with 100 shards of little fish bones going in every direction. It was like biting into a small porcupine. This was the first and last time I tried eating something new without my wife around. To be fair, once I learned how to eat this fish properly, it actually became one of my favorite dishes I had while in China. I should add, through all of my food adventures in China, I luckily managed to make it through without any food sickness or other horribleness. Which is quite fortunate because the bathroom situation in China is worth talking about. You may know about squat toilets and all of that. Well, a lot of the newer and nicer places actually do have Western style toilets. But that's not the main issue with China. Oh no, it's the toilet paper situation. Toilet paper is not provided in China, so you better be coming prepared with some Charmin on you at all times. Don't worry, it gets worse. In much of China, you're not supposed to ever flush toilet paper down a toilet either. No, instead you have a little trash can next to the toilet filled with doo-doo paper. Needless to say, public bathrooms can get really grimy really fast. If you've got that Crohn's disease or something, you probably are not going to have a great time in China. On to more pleasant topics, Nanjing was actually a super chill city to just walk around in and explore, the highlight of which is probably Confucius Temple, which is a nice little shopping area with tons of restaurants and street food and amazing photo ops. There's a lot of lovely parks and buildings to see in both the days and the nights. I even managed to wander out on my own a little bit to do some exploring and drawing at a nearby park. The old ladies were out in full force, seeing who could sing the loudest karaoke in the entire park, while tons of old men just sat around gambling. It's a pretty unique atmosphere, but with all of this walking each day, my wife and I decided it might be a good idea to try out a couple massage places. Up first was a small foot massage place. I don't think they got many foreigners in this place because most of the staff just spent the whole time staring at my feet and commenting on how white they are. Speaking of being a foreigner in China, it wasn't really a big deal among young adults, but almost every old person just stares at you, confused. Children are a bit more brave and will constantly try to say hello in English. Obviously, the further you get away from the big cities, the more extreme this gets. It's kind of fun overall, being a weird novelty. Well, anyway, the foot massage was certainly okay, but a couple days later, my wife suggested we try a full body massage, since that type of stuff is so cheap in China. I hesitantly agreed, not really knowing what to expect, and she picked out a random place in some shady apartment complex. My spider sense was tingling, but we found the place and they shuffled us into a back room. So I'm standing there with my wife, not really sure what to do, and in walks two blind people. Apparently, this was a blind massage place, which is a common thing, but I was not mentally prepared. And since I couldn't even communicate with anyone, I was just standing there confused while they blindly searched around the room trying to find us. Eventually, my wife started translating, and it all worked out fine. Just a quick warning though, this was not a relaxing massage. They were trying to break us. You know, that real deep tissue type stuff. Okay, this video is going on twice as long as I wanted it to, so I'll just share one last quick tourist note. While in Nanjing, one of the most impressive things you can visit is the Neosho Cultural Center and Usnisa Palace. I can't pronounce this stuff. This place is like Buddhist Disneyland. It's a newly built area that manages to combine classic aesthetics and intricately detailed architecture with modern technology. They must have spent $1 billion on this place because it is nice. Deep under the palace, they have a stunningly beautiful shrine area with amazing decor that would really impress anyone. It's ridiculous, and in the main dome of the palace, they have a giant Buddha statue that's slowly rotating with a haze of fog constantly surrounding it. They even have a show where a giant mechanical lotus flower comes out from underneath it and envelops the whole statue, turning it into a smaller sanctum with projections on the wall and all sorts of special effects. It's pretty great. Alright, I'll try to wrap this video up. Sadly, I didn't bring you all any presents from my trip. I did, however, pick up some wonderful shoes. These are Jordans, not to be confused with Jordans. The logo is clearly different and unique, much like the design of the shoes themselves, which are definitely not Adidas's. So I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it's not an art video. And if you hated it, I'm sorry. I shall be getting some new art videos up shortly. But if you did enjoy it, let me know. It would be fun to do more storytime vlog type videos just once in a while. As always, a big shout out to my Patreons. Although this isn't really the type of video they signed up for, I still want to say I love you guys. Alright, see you everyone.